deaf? I told you to get out of the way, you useless cleaner." Layla Delgado's voice, sharp as broken glass, sliced through the elegant murmur of the lobby. The sound of her designer heel striking Alva Petit's rib was dry, an ugly crack that echoed on the polished marble. Alva, on her knees on the floor, didn't react to the pain immediately. Her mind, a universe of patterns and symmetry, was entirely focused on the tiny dark stain marring the floor's white perfection, an imperfection she was gently trying to remove with a microfiber cloth she always carried in her pocket. To anyone passing by, the scene was clear: an impatient socialite humiliating a cleaning staff member. Layla, with her friends, Ines Popescu and Hannah Lombardi, chuckling discreetly beside her, felt powerful, the queen of this concrete and glass castle. She was about to marry the man who built this empire, Seojun Arslan Janssen, and this building was the crown jewel. At 58, Alva Petit never imagined that the silence she so cultivated would be mistaken for submission. She felt Layla's contemptuous gaze burn into her back, but instead of anger, she felt a strange analytical calm, like a scientist observing a predictable chemical reaction. Arrogance was a variable she knew well. Silently, she folded the cloth, put it away, and slowly rose, her movements deliberate and precise. Her eyes, a deep, incredibly focused blue, finally met Layla's. There was no fear, no anger, no plea. There was only an assessment, a silent calculation that made Layla for a moment feel a shiver. That look did not belong to a cleaner. It belonged to someone who saw through her, who saw the cracks in her perfectly made-up facade. Layla shook off the uncomfortable sensation. "What are you staring at? Lose something?" she sneered. "I'll be speaking to my fiancé about the quality of service here. People like you shouldn't be working in places like this." Alva didn't respond with words. She had already seen signs, little red flags her mind cataloged with ruthless efficiency. A quick flashback transported her to a dinner party weeks ago, Layla describing with disdain a waiter who spilled a drop of wine. "Uncouth people," she'd said, while Seojun, blinded by love, merely smiled. Another memory, Layla on the phone, laughing with a friend about how easy it was to manipulate rich, naive men. Alva had overheard by chance, but filed away the information, as she would any relevant data. She knew Layla wasn't who she seemed, but she had underestimated the depth of her cruelty. Now the cruelty had a face, a name, and the imprint of a shoe on her clothing. Alva Petit was not a cleaner. She was the invisible architect of the Janssen empire, the woman whose neurodivergent mind saw market patterns no one else could. She was Seojun Arslan Janssen's mother, and Layla Delgado had just kicked the queen on her own chessboard. As Layla walked away, laughing with her friends about the incident, Alva remained still. In her mind, the gears were already turning, not for revenge but for an intrinsic need to restore order, to correct an equation that was dangerously wrong. The error, she concluded, was Layla, and errors needed to be eliminated from the system. The public humiliation had not broken her. It had merely initiated a new process, a process that would be methodical, silent, and, in the end, devastating. Layla thought she had kicked an insignificant piece, but in reality, she had tripped the trigger of a trap she herself didn't know existed. There, in the center of that lobby, a monument to her own quiet success, Alva Petit stood firm, like someone guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before its time. What Layla couldn't know was that in Alva's pocket, along with the microfiber cloth, was a phone connected directly to Anders Schmidt, her head of security and the most loyal man in her circle. And he, from a discreet vantage point, had recorded everything. The first domino had just been nudged. If this story of prejudice and the promise of a twist intrigued you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You'll want to find out how a simple moment of humiliation would become the catalyst for a revolution that no one, especially Layla Delgado, would ever forget. Seojun's arrival was like a wave of warmth in the lobby's cool atmosphere. He was charismatic, with a smile that seemed to light up the space, and his attention was entirely on Layla. He hadn't seen the incident, only the residual tension in the air. Layla, a born actress, ran into his arms, her face a mask of anguish. "Darling, thank goodness you're here. That woman," she began, vaguely pointing at Alva, who watched the scene from a safe distance. "She was so strange. She was blocking the way and wouldn't move, just stared at me in a frightening way. I think she's not well. Seojin, always eager to appease, cast a quick, concerned glance in his mother's direction. He didn't immediately recognize her in her simple clothes, only seeing a staff member who seemed to be causing his fiancée trouble. "I'm so sorry about that, darling. I'll sort it out," he said, and with a gesture to a nearby security guard, indicated that the situation should be controlled. For Alva, that moment was more painful than the kick. Seeing her son, the center of her universe, so easily manipulated, so blinded by Layla's facade, was a sharp pang of disappointment. He didn't see the lie in her eyes, the falsity in her tone. The injustice was now not just about her, but about the web of deceit ensnaring her son. That night the tension deepened. Seojin insisted Alva join them for dinner at an exclusive restaurant. Layla, upon seeing Alva seated at the table, now in more formal attire, but still with her aura of simplicity and quietude, didn't make the connection to the cleaner from the lobby. To her, Alva was just Seojin's eccentric, reclusive mother, a relic of a humble past he should forget. Throughout the dinner, Layla treated her with veiled condescension, interrupting her when she tried to speak and directing questions to Seojin about her as if she weren't present. "Your mother has always been so quiet, darling. She doesn't like going out much, does she?" Every word was a small stab, an act of erasure. Layla's antagonism escalated when, in a supposedly accidental move, she knocked over a glass of red wine directly onto Alva's dress, a simple linen dress that held immense sentimental value. "Oh my goodness, how clumsy," Layla exclaimed with theatrical concern. "Darling, I'm so sorry, don't worry, I'll buy you 10 dresses better than this rag." The word rag hung in the air. It was the breaking point. In that instant, Alva saw Layla not just as an opportunist, but as a destructive force, someone who took pleasure in diminishing others to feel bigger. Alva's resilience had been forged in real hardship. She remembered sleepless nights after her husband's premature death, with a young Seojin sleeping in the next room, while she studied spreadsheets and drew business plans on the kitchen table. Her mind, which others called different, was her greatest ally. She saw connections where others saw chaos, transforming a small electronics component workshop into the global giant that was Janssen Corp. Each humiliation from Layla was just more data to be processed, one more reason for the action that was becoming increasingly inevitable. Alva rose from the table with a calmness that disconcerted everyone. "Excuse me, I need to go to the restroom," she said, her voice neutral. In the corridor, away from prying eyes, she took out her phone. She opened a secure chat with Anders Schmidt. The message contained a single word: initiate. Anders, who had been waiting for that signal, replied in seconds. Initiated. Phase 1 underway. Layla, back at the table, smiled victoriously, believing she had put the weird old woman in her place. What that privileged woman didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing her own sentence of defeat. She thought she had stained a dress, but in reality, she had just signed a confession. For a moment, as Alva lowered her head while leaving, everyone thought they had broken her spirit. But those who know true strength know that it grows precisely in silence, feeding on the very injustice they try to impose. Alva's command, initiate, triggered a silent, lethal operation, conducted by Anders Schmidt with the precision of a chess master. Anders was not just a head of security, he was the guardian of the Janssen family secrets, a strategist who devoted his life to protecting Alva and her legacy. He was the perfect ally, invisible, efficient, and ruthlessly loyal. The first action was to consolidate the initial evidence. The lobby recording, in high definition and with crystal clear audio, was already a powerful piece. But Anders knew that to dismantle someone like Layla, more than an act of cruelty, was needed. The very foundation of her fraudulent identity had to be destroyed. He began a full financial investigation. In less than 48 hours, he uncovered an abyss of debt hidden beneath the sheen of designer bags and expensive shoes. Layla lived far beyond her means, maxing out credit cards and owing loan sharks, all to maintain the appearance of wealth that had made her attractive to men like Seojin. Meanwhile, Layla, oblivious to the storm brewing, reveled in her position. She was in charge of planning the engagement party, an event she envisioned as the year's biggest display of social status. She spent Seojin's money without hesitation, hiring the most expensive vendors, choosing opulent decorations, and a guest list that included society's elite. In her interactions with Alva, her arrogance reached new heights. She'd call Alva to ask her opinion, only to mock her simple and outdated suggestions. "Oh, Alva, darling, wildflowers. That's so quaint," she'd say on the phone, rolling her eyes at her friends. "We're in a ballroom, not a barn." Each interaction was a new layer of contempt, and every word was secretly recorded by Anders. The second front of Anders' investigation was Layla's personal life. He was subtle, using contacts and technology to track her movements and communications. And then, he found the gold vein. Ricardo Smith, a business rival of Seojin's, equally wealthy but with a far more predatory reputation. Layla wasn't just betraying Seojin. She was playing both sides, securing an insurance policy should her plan with Seojin fail. Anders obtained everything: hotel records of secret trips, screenshots of passionate messages, and most damning of all, an audio recording of Layla with a friend, detailing her plan to marry Seojin, secure a stake in his fortune through marriage, and then decide if it was worth continuing or divorcing and taking half. Alva received Anders' reports on her tablet, in her quiet, minimalist office. She showed no emotion, simply absorbing the facts. Each new piece of evidence was a puzzle piece, and the final picture was uglier than she had imagined. There were no more doubts. Layla wasn't just an unsuitable fiancée. She was a parasite, an existential threat to her son's happiness and the stability of everything she had built. The small victory came when Alva, analyzing the engagement party plan Layla had sent her to mock, noticed a vulnerability. The audiovisual system, controlled by a company Layla had hired, could be accessed remotely. With a single phone call, Alva, as the true owner of the conglomerate, had Janssen Corp acquire the small event company. Now they controlled the screens, the sound, the narrative. The trap was set. The day of the party arrived. The ballroom was stunning, exactly as Layla had dreamed. She was the center of attention, radiant in a haute couture gown, receiving compliments and envy. When Alva arrived, wearing an elegant yet understated navy blue silk suit, Layla barely spared her a glance. She was too busy being the star. For a moment, when Layla saw Alva standing alone in a corner, she felt only contempt. She was preparing for the greatest triumph of her life, unaware she was walking into a perfectly orchestrated public execution. Every fake smile, every raised glass of champagne, was one step closer to the abyss Alva Petit had patiently prepared for her. The orchestra was about to play the fanfare for the toast, and Layla Delgado's world was seconds away from imploding. The ballroom was bathed in a golden light. Hundreds of guests, the city's elite, mingled and laughed, their jewels sparkling under the crystal chandeliers. Layla Delgado was at the center of it all, beside Seojin, her face illuminated by a smile of pure victory. This was her moment, the coronation of years of planning and manipulation. Seojin took the microphone, his face beaming with happiness. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here to celebrate the happiest moment of my life," he began, his gaze fixed on Layla. "I've never met anyone like Layla. She is..." The stage lights dimmed, and the three giant screens behind the couple, which were supposed to display a montage of romantic photos, lit up. But it wasn't a smiling couple that appeared on screen. It was a sharp, high-definition image of the Janssen Corp building's lobby. A confused silence began to spread through the hall. On screen, Layla's figure appeared, arrogant and dismissive. The audience watched in shock as she insulted a woman on her knees on the floor. Then came the sound, amplified by the ballroom's state-of-the-art sound system. "Deaf? I told you to get out of the way, you useless cleaner." The dry sound of the heel striking the woman echoed, making many guests flinch. Layla's face froze. The smile vanished, replaced by a mask of panic and disbelief. Seojin turned to the screen, his expression shifting from confusion to horror. He recognized the woman on the floor. It was his mother. Before anyone could fully process the scene, the screens changed. Now they were screenshots of text messages, enlarged so everyone could read them. Conversations between Layla and Ines Popescu. "His mother is so weird. Seems like she has some problem. totally antisocial. Read a message from Layla. At least she doesn't interfere much. Imagine having to deal with that autistic weirdo every day, replied another. The word autistic flashed on the screen, laden with venom. A murmur of indignation rippled through the crowd. But the execution was far from over. The screens changed again, this time showing WhatsApp conversations between Layla and Ricardo Smith. Hearts, kissing emojis, intimate photos that left little to the imagination. Phrases like, "Can't wait to see you again," "Seojun is so naive he'll never suspect," and "After I marry, we'll have all the money in the world." The final blow was an audio recording. Layla's voice, clear and unmistakable, talking to a friend. "The plan is simple. I marry him, endure for a year so it doesn't look like a scam, and then file for divorce. With his prenuptial agreement, I'll walk away with at least 50 million. He's a walking ATM, and his weird mother won't even see what hit her." The silence in the hall was total, absolute. Layla began to tremble, her face turning from white to red. "It's a lie! It's all fake!" she screamed, her voice shrill and desperate. She turned to Seojun, grabbing his arm. "Darling, you believe me, don't you? It's her. That cleaner did this." Her wild eyes met Alva's, who watched everything from a corner, her expression serene, almost impassive. It was her. That crazy cleaner. Seojun wrenched himself free from Layla's grip as if he had touched something toxic. His face, once full of love, was now a mask of ice and pain. He didn't say a word to Layla. Instead, he walked slowly across the hall, the sea of guests parting for him, until he stopped in front of his mother. He took her hand and led her to the stage. He picked up the microphone he had dropped. His voice, when he spoke, was low but carried a cold fury that cut through the silence. "This crazy cleaner," he said, his arm protectively around Alva's shoulders, "is Alva Petit, my mother, the founder and CEO of Janssen Corp., the woman who built this empire from scratch, the true owner of this building and everything you see, and the woman to whom you," he said, his eyes fusing Layla, "owe every cent you've spent and every lie you've told." The hall erupted in a chaos of whispers and recording cell phones. Layla Delgado stood alone on stage, under the spotlight. Her charade crumbled to dust before hundreds of witnesses. As the masks fell and Layla's empire of lies turned to ruins, a powerful truth emerged. Justice sometimes is not about shouting the loudest, but about having the patience to build the truth, brick by brick. The humiliation was complete, but the story of Alva, the woman everyone underestimated, was just beginning to be told. Layla Delgado's downfall was as spectacular as her rise had been fraudulent. In the days following the engagement party, which became known in social circles as the engagement execution, she became a pariah. The same friends who laughed at her jokes now crossed the street to avoid her. Ricardo Smith, the secret lover, issued a public statement claiming to have been deceived and manipulated by her, severing all ties. Seojun's legal team, acting on Alva's precise orders, was relentless. They not only annulled any prenuptial agreement but also initiated legal actions to reclaim the value of all gifts, trips, and luxuries Layla had acquired with Seojun's money under false pretenses. Within weeks, she was drowning in debt, evicted from her luxury apartment and forced to sell her clothes and jewelry to pay for lawyers. Her humiliation was complete and permanent. The last anyone heard of her, she was working as a cashier at a convenience store in a remote neighborhood. Her face, once splashed across society pages, now marked by exhaustion and the bitterness of failure. Meanwhile, Alva Petit emerged from the shadows, not as a vengeful figure, but as an unexpected icon. The story leaked to the press, and what could have been a family scandal transformed into an inspiring narrative. Forbes magazine published a cover story about her, titled "The Silent CEO: How the Mind the World Underestimated Built an Empire." The story of her neurodivergence was not presented as a weakness, but as the source of her business genius, her ability to focus, to see patterns, and to operate with an unshakable logic. Alva used her newfound platform for a greater purpose. She launched the Petit Johnson Foundation for Neurodivergent Innovators, an organization dedicated to funding and mentoring entrepreneurs on the autism spectrum and with other forms of neurodivergence. She proved that the same mind Layla had called weird was capable of changing the world for the better. The relationship between Alva and Seojin transformed. The painful revelation about Layla forced Seojin to re-evaluate everything he thought he knew about people and about himself. He felt a deep shame for his blindness, but this shame turned into renewed, profound admiration for his mother. He began spending more time with her, not just as a son, but as a student, seeking to understand the unique way she saw the world. He finally understood that her quietness was not distance but depth, and that her strength lay not in words but in precise actions. Minor characters like Ines Popescu, in an attempt to distance themselves from the disaster, gave anonymous interviews to gossip blogs, stating they always knew there was something wrong with Layla. Social validation shifted entirely to Alva, celebrating her intelligence and her dignity. Anders Schmidt, the loyal ally, was promoted to COO of Janssen Corp, a public recognition of his loyalty and competence. The moral of the story echoed far beyond business circles. Alva Petit taught a powerful lesson. True strength often lies with those society marginalizes or underestimates. The best response to prejudice is not anger, but excellence. She didn't need to shout to be heard. She simply rewrote the narrative with facts, logic, and a strategic patience that her opponents, in their boisterous arrogance, could never comprehend. She sought not revenge, but justice, and in doing so, not only protected her family and her legacy, but also inspired countless others to embrace their own differences as superpowers. Layla Delgado tried to destroy Alva, but ended up destroying herself. Alva learned that true strength isn't in conforming to the world, but in making the world conform to your principles. The best revenge isn't to reciprocate the harm suffered. It's to achieve the success your enemies could never imagine. And you, what would you have done in Alva's place? Let us know in the comments if you believe patience is the most powerful weapon. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories where justice always, somehow, finds a way.